The dim lights of Murphy's cantina cast long shadows across the crowded room. Marine Sergeant Jake Mitchell sat at a corner table, nursing his third beer of the evening. Around him, the sounds of different alien languages mixed with human voices, creating the usual chaos of the New Dakota trading station. Jake had been looking forward to this shore leave for months. After 6 weeks of patrol duty on the Outer Rim, he and his squad deserved a few days of peace. The trading station orbited above New Dakota, serving as neutral ground where humans and aliens could meet, trade, and sometimes just drink together. The cantina was packed tonight. Human colonists sat next to blue-skinned Nexians while tall bird-like Averans perched on specially designed stools. Jake watched it all with quiet interest. Even after 5 years in the Marines, he still found alien behavior fascinating. His peaceful evening was interrupted by loud voices near the bar. Jake turned to see a group of Valerian warriors surrounding a human family. The Valerians were impressive creatures, standing nearly 8 feet tall with thick, muscled bodies covered in gray scales. Their yellow eyes glowed with an inner fire that spoke of predatory intelligence. The human family looked terrified. The father tried to shield his wife and young daughter as the lead Valerian leaned down, speaking in harsh, guttural tones. Jake could not hear the exact words, but the meaning was clear. The aliens were looking for trouble. Jake stood up slowly, his hand instinctively moving to his sidearm. He had seen this before on other worlds. Some alien species viewed humans as weak, soft creatures unworthy of respect. The Valerians were among the worst offenders. The lead Valerian was clearly the commander of the group. He wore ornate armor that marked him as high-ranking, and his scales were darker than the others. When he spoke, the other warriors listened. Jake counted 6 Valerians in total, all armed with traditional blade weapons and energy rifles. The human father was trying to reason with them. "Please, we're just here to trade. We don't want any trouble." The Valerian commander laughed, a sound like grinding stones. "Trouble follows weakness, human. Your kind brings shame to this sector with your cowardice." Jake had heard enough. He walked over to the bar, his military bearing unmistakable. Years of training had given him a confident stride that marked him as a professional soldier. The other patrons noticed him coming and began to move away from the confrontation. "Is there a problem here?" Jake asked, his voice calm but carrying the authority of command. The Valerian commander turned to face him, yellow eyes narrowing as they took in Jake's appearance. The human was average height by his species standards, but there was something in his posture that suggested he was not like the others. "Another weak human," the commander growled. "Do you also wish to beg for mercy?" Jake smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. "Actually, I was going to suggest you find somewhere else to drink. These people are under the protection of the Colonial Marine Corps." The other Valerians moved closer, forming a loose circle around Jake and the family. The commander stepped forward, using his height advantage to loom over the Marine. "I am Commander Thane of the Valerian 6th Combat Legion," he announced loudly, ensuring everyone in the cantina could hear. "We have conquered 12 worlds in this sector. We have destroyed human outposts and scattered your armies like frightened children." Jake nodded thoughtfully. "That's impressive. I'm Sergeant Jake Mitchell, United States Marine Corps. We've been fighting wars for over 400 years. Thane laughed again, but there was less confidence in it now. Something about the human's calm manner was unsettling. Most humans either ran or begged when faced with Valerian warriors. "You speak of your past glories, human, but what can you do now? You are one, and we are many." The cantina had grown quiet. Even the bartender, an elderly Nexian named Kef, had stopped serving drinks to watch the confrontation. Everyone knew that violence was about to erupt. Jake looked around the room, noting the positions of civilians and potential cover. His training automatically cataloged threats and escape routes. "You're right about the numbers," he admitted. "But you made one mistake." "What mistake?" Thane demanded, his hand moving to his weapon. "You threatened a United States Marine," Jake replied simply. Thane's warriors spread out, taking aggressive positions. They had done this before, intimidating single humans until they submitted or fled. But something was different this time. The human showed no fear, no signs of backing down. Your Marine Corps cannot help you here, Thane sneered. This is neutral space. There are no human warships in this system. Jake reached slowly for his comm device, making sure his movements were visible to avoid triggering an attack. Who said anything about warships? He activated the device with a subtle gesture, sending a coded message that would be received by every Marine within 50 kilometers. The message was simple. Code Yellow, Murphy's Cantina, immediate response requested. You call for help like a frightened child, Thane observed. This proves human weakness. Not calling for help, Jake corrected. Calling my unit. See, Marines don't travel alone. We work as teams. Thane stepped closer, his massive frame casting a shadow over Jake. How many can you call? 2? 3? We will crush them all. Jake glanced at his chronometer. Give it a minute and find out. The Valerian commander's yellow eyes blazed with anger. You dare make demands of me? I will give you 1 minute to produce these mythical reinforcements. When they fail to appear, I will make an example of you that will teach all humans their place. The other patrons had backed away from the confrontation, creating a clear space around the two groups. Some humans were quietly heading for the exits, while others found secure positions to watch the coming fight. 1 minute, Thane repeated, raising his voice so everyone could hear. When that time passes, you and your weak species will learn what happens when you challenge true warriors. Jake simply nodded and checked his chronometer again. 60 seconds. That should be more than enough time. The countdown had begun. Commander Thane began his countdown with theatrical flair. 60 seconds, human. 59. 58. Jake Mitchell stood perfectly still, his hands relaxed at his sides. He showed no signs of fear or panic that the Valerians expected to see. Instead, he appeared almost bored by the entire situation. The cantina had transformed into an arena. Patrons pressed against the walls, creating a wide circle around the confrontation. Some aliens had never seen humans fight before and were curious about what would happen. Others had heard stories and were quietly moving toward the exits. 55, 54, 53. Thane continued, his voice growing louder with each number. The Valerian warriors had spread out across the cantina floor. They moved with practiced ease, cutting off escape routes and positioning themselves for a coordinated attack. Their weapons remained holstered, but their hands hovered near their hilts. Jake noticed their formation and nodded slightly in approval. Not bad, he said quietly. You've done this before. Thane paused in his counting. Many times, human. Your species learns slowly, but they do learn to fear us eventually. 48, 47, 46. A young Nexian trader named Voss whispered to his companion, The human seems very calm. Perhaps he knows something we do not. His companion, an experienced merchant who had dealt with humans for decades, shook his head. Humans are unpredictable. Some fight, some run, some freeze with fear. This one. He trailed off, studying Jake's posture. This one is different. 42, 41, 40. Jake checked his chronometer and smiled. The smile was not reassuring. It was the expression of someone who knew something others did not. You might want to hurry up with that counting, he suggested. Thane's yellow eyes narrowed. Are you mocking me, human? Just being helpful. Time moves faster than you think. The Valerian commander resumed his countdown with increased anger. 38, 37, 36. The human family that had started this confrontation huddled near the bar. The father kept trying to move his wife and daughter toward the exit, but the Valerian positioning made escape impossible. Other civilian humans in the cantina were trapped as well. Jake noticed their predicament and made another subtle gesture. To most observers, it looked like he was simply adjusting his sleeve. In reality, he was activating a secondary beacon that would inform his unit about civilian positions. 33, 32, 31. Kef, the elderly Nexian bartender, had seen many fights in his cantina over the years. He recognized the signs of serious violence approaching and began quietly moving his most expensive bottles to safety behind the reinforced bar. This will not end well, he muttered to himself. Valerians do not show mercy. and humans do not surrender easily. 28, 27, 26. One of the Valerian warriors, younger than the others, shifted nervously. He had heard stories about human Marines, though he had dismissed them as propaganda. But something about this particular human's confidence was unsettling. "Commander," he whispered to Thane, "perhaps we should reconsider." The human shows no fear. Thane's response was a harsh growl that silenced his subordinate. Fear will come when his imaginary friends fail to appear. 23, 22, 21. Jake looked around the cantina one more time, noting the positions of every person present. His training had taught him to always be aware of his surroundings, and that awareness was about to become very important. "You know," Jake said conversationally, "most people don't understand how Marines operate. They think we're just soldiers with better training." 20, 19, 18. "But that's not quite right," Jake continued, ignoring the countdown. "The training is important, sure, but what makes Marines special is something else entirely." Thane was becoming frustrated by the human's calm demeanor. 17, 16. "What makes you special, human? Your ability to waste time with empty words?" "Teamwork," Jake replied simply. "We work as a team, always." 15, 14, 13. The countdown was entering its final phase, and tension filled the cantina like a physical presence. Several alien species that were known for their combat abilities watched with professional interest. They wanted to see how humans fought when cornered. A Korthak warrior, whose people were allies of the Valerians, leaned forward in anticipation. "The human will break soon," he predicted. "They always do when faced with superior numbers." His companion, a scarred veteran of many battles, was not so sure. "Look at his stance. Look at his breathing. This one has seen combat before." 12, 11, 10. Jake checked his chronometer one final time and nodded to himself. Everything was proceeding according to plan. "You should know," he told Thane, "that threatening one Marine is the same as threatening all Marines." 9, 8, 7. The Valerian commander's voice had taken on a triumphant tone. He was confident that no help was coming for the lone human. "Your empty boasts will not save you now." 6, 5, 4. Jake's comm device chirped softly, indicating an incoming message. He glanced at it and smiled again. Right on time. 3, 2. Thane never reached one. The first sign that something had changed was a barely audible sound from above. Most patrons missed it entirely, but Jake's trained ear caught the whisper of movement in the ventilation system. Then the lights flickered. It was just for a moment, so brief that many thought they had imagined it. But in that instant of darkness, shapes moved in the cantina. Shadows shifted. Positions changed. When the lights returned to full brightness, everything looked the same. The Valerian warriors were still in their positions. The civilians were still pressed against the walls. Jake still stood alone in the center of the room. But something fundamental had changed. Thane felt it first. The experienced warrior's instincts screamed that danger was near, though he could not identify the source. His yellow eyes swept the cantina, searching for threats he could not see. "Where are your friends, human?" he demanded, but his voice lacked its earlier confidence. Jake glanced at his chronometer. "Give it another 30 seconds. The countdown was over, but the real challenge was just beginning. The 30 seconds passed like hours. Commander Thane and his warriors stood ready for battle, but something felt wrong. The human's confidence had not broken. If anything, Jake Mitchell seemed more relaxed now than when the confrontation began. "Your time is up, human," Thane announced, but his voice carried less certainty than before. Jake nodded and looked at his chronometer. "Actually, you're right. Time's up." That was when the ceiling panel directly above the bar dropped silently to the floor. Lance Corporal Mike Torres slipped through the opening and landed behind the counter without making a sound. His rifle was already in his hands, pointed directly at the nearest Valerian warrior. Thane spun around, shock clear on his scaled face. "What? How did he?" Before the Valerian commander could finish his question, a storage room door opened. Corporal Lisa Grant stepped out, her weapon trained on the Valerians near the cantina's main entrance. She moved with the smooth precision of someone who had done this many times before. "That's two," Jake said calmly. A service hatch near the floor opened, and Private First Class David Kim emerged. He took position behind an overturned table, his rifle covering the left flank of the Valerian formation. 3. Thane's head swiveled back and forth, trying to track all the new threats. "This is impossible. We watched all the entrances. We secured the area." Jake shook his head. "You secured the obvious entrances. Marines don't use obvious entrances when we can help it." Another ceiling panel shifted, and Corporal Brett Johnson dropped down near the cantina's emergency exit. His arrival cut off the Valerians' primary escape route. 4. The alien patrons in the cantina began to understand what they were witnessing. The humans had not just responded to Jake's call for help. They had somehow infiltrated the entire building without being detected. A ventilation grate near the floor popped open, and Private Emma Foster crawled out. She immediately took cover behind the bar's support beam, her weapon adding to the growing crossfire pattern that was forming around the Valerians. 5. Sergeant Ryan Clark appeared from behind a decorative pillar that everyone had assumed was solid. He had somehow concealed himself inside the structure, waiting for the signal to reveal his position. "How many of you are there?" Thane demanded, his earlier confidence completely gone. "Enough," Jake replied. Private Jessica Moore stepped out from behind a group of alien patrons who had been unknowingly providing her cover. She had been in the cantina all along, disguised as a civilian traitor. 7. The Valerian warriors were beginning to panic. They had trained for combat, but this was unlike any fight they had ever experienced. The humans were not charging into battle like wild animals. Instead, they were methodically surrounding their enemies with professional precision. Corporal Amanda Price emerged from the cantina's kitchen, where she had been hiding among the staff. Her position gave her a clear view of the Valerians' rear formation. 8. More Marines continued to appear from impossible locations. Private Tommy Wilson slid out from under a large booth where he had been concealed. Corporal Sarah Davis stepped out from behind the cantina's holographic display system. 10 Marines, Jake announced, but we're not done yet. The Valerian commander was now turning in circles, trying to keep track of all the human soldiers who had somehow materialized in his secured area. "This cannot be happening. We checked every corner, every hiding place." "You checked for people hiding," Jake explained. "You didn't check for people who were already in position." More Marines revealed themselves. Private Mark Johnson had been concealed in the cantina's sound system. Corporal Rachel Green emerged from behind a false wall panel. Sergeant Kevin Brown dropped from a light fixture that had been reinforced to support his weight. 15, Jake counted. The aliens watching the confrontation were amazed. Elder Voss, the Nexian traitor, whispered to his companion, "I have never seen anything like this. How did they know to be in position?" His companion, the experienced merchant, nodded slowly. This was planned. They did not just respond to his call. They were already here, waiting. The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the cantina. The Marines had not rushed to Jake's rescue. They had been in position all along, hidden throughout the building as part of some larger security plan. Private Lisa Martinez appeared from behind the cantina's waste disposal unit. Corporal James Taylor stepped out from inside a decorative fountain that had concealed his presence perfectly. 17. Thane's warriors were now completely surrounded. Every angle of attack or escape was covered by at least 2 Marines. The humans had created overlapping fields of fire that would allow them to support each other, no matter what happened. 18 Marines, Jake announced. "Just 2 more to go." A maintenance panel in the floor opened, and Private Robert Davis climbed out. He had been positioned in the building's lower level, with access to the cantina through service tunnels that the Valerians never knew existed. 19. The final Marine to reveal herself was Staff Sergeant Patricia Williams, Jake's commanding officer. She had been sitting at a corner table, disguised as an off-duty spaceship mechanic. When she stood up and removed her civilian jacket, her sergeant's stripes were clearly visible. 20, Jake said with satisfaction. The cantina was completely silent except for the sound of 20 rifles being chambered simultaneously. Every Marine had their weapon trained on a different Valerian, ensuring that no target would be missed if fighting broke out. Staff Sergeant Williams walked forward, her command presence filling the room. "Commander Thane, I believe you wanted to meet some Marines." The Valerian leader looked around at the ring of human soldiers surrounding his warriors. For the first time since the confrontation began, fear showed in his yellow eyes. "This is impossible," he whispered. "No," Williams replied calmly. "This is just good planning." Commander Thane's yellow eyes darted between the 20 Marines surrounding his warriors. The tactical situation had shifted completely in less than 60 seconds. What had seemed like an easy victory now looked like certain defeat. "You cannot threaten us," Thane said, though his voice lacked conviction. "This is neutral space. Violence is forbidden here." Staff Sergeant Williams smiled coldly. "You're right about the violence being forbidden. That's why you should have thought twice before threatening civilians and Marines." Jake stepped forward, his hands still relaxed at his sides. "Last chance to walk away, Commander. Take your warriors and leave. No one has to get hurt today." Thane looked around at his 6 warriors. They were all experienced fighters, veterans of many battles across the galaxy, but they had never faced anything like this coordinated response from human forces. "We are Valerian warriors," Thane declared, trying to rebuild his confidence. "We do not retreat from inferior species." "Your choice," Williams replied. The Valerian commander's pride would not allow him to back down in front of so many witnesses. Too many alien species were watching. If word spread that Valerians had been intimidated by humans, it would damage their reputation across the sector. "Attack!" Thane shouted, drawing his energy weapon. The fight that followed was unlike anything the Cantina's patrons had ever seen. The Valerians were strong, fast, and experienced fighters, but they fought as individuals, each warrior trying to prove his personal combat skills. The Marines fought as a unit. When Thane fired his energy weapon at Jake, 3 Marines immediately returned fire while Jake rolled to cover behind an overturned table. Corporal Grant and Private Kim provided covering fire, while Lance Corporal Torres moved to a better position. The Valerian warrior nearest to the bar charged at Private Foster, expecting to overwhelm her with his superior size and strength. Instead, he found himself caught in crossfire from Sergeant Clark and Corporal Davis, who had been waiting for exactly this movement. Foster dropped to one knee and swept the alien's legs while Clark hit him with a stun blast from his rifle. The Valerian crashed to the floor unconscious before he understood what had happened. "One down," Williams called out, coordinating the fight from her position. The remaining Valerians tried to use their traditional tactics. They spread out and attempted to engage the Marines in individual combat. But every time one of them moved, they found themselves facing multiple human opponents. Thane himself discovered this when he tried to reach Jake. Corporal Price and Private Wilson flanked him from both sides, forcing him to defend against attacks from multiple directions. When he turned to face one threat, the other would strike. Private Martinez and Corporal Taylor worked together to take down a Valerian warrior who had been trying to reach the civilian families. They moved in perfect coordination, with Martinez providing distraction while Taylor delivered the decisive blow. The Valerians were learning that human combat doctrine was completely different from their own. Where they valued individual strength and honor, humans focused on teamwork and efficiency. 2 down, Williams announced as another Valerian warrior fell to coordinated fire from Johnson and Green. The alien patrons watched in fascination as the Marines demonstrated their tactical superiority. Elder Voss turned to his companion and whispered, "They fight like a single organism with 20 bodies." The experienced merchant nodded. "Now I understand why human colonies have been so successful. They do not rely on individual heroes. They create teams of heroes." Thane was growing desperate. His warriors were falling one by one, and the Marines seemed to anticipate every move his forces made. When one of his remaining warriors tried to take a human hostage, he found himself facing the combined fire of 5 Marines who had positioned themselves to protect the civilians. 3 down, Williams called. Jake had taken position behind the bar, working with Torres to coordinate the Marines' movements. They communicated with hand signals and brief verbal commands, maintaining perfect coordination despite the chaos of combat. The Valerians' energy weapons were powerful, but their wielders could not match the Marines' tactical awareness. Every shot they fired was answered by disciplined return fire from multiple positions. Sergeant Brown and Private Davis combined forces to take down a Valerian warrior, who had been trying to reach the cantina's main entrance. Their timing was perfect, with Brown providing suppression fire while Davis moved in for the capture. 4 down, Williams announced. Only 2 Valerian warriors remained standing, plus their commander. Thane looked around desperately, searching for any tactical advantage he could exploit. But the Marines had positioned themselves to cover every possible angle. The final 2 warriors tried to make a coordinated rush toward the civilians, hoping to force the Marines to hold their fire. Instead, they ran directly into a trap that Williams had prepared. Corporals Green and Price had anticipated this exact move. They intercepted the charging Valerians with stun weapons while Privates Foster and Martinez blocked their escape routes. 5 down. 6 down, Williams called as the last 2 warriors collapsed. Only Commander Thane remained standing. He was breathing heavily, his energy weapon pointing uselessly at targets that were too well covered to hit. 20 Marines had their rifles trained on him, and he knew that any aggressive move would be his last. Surrender now, and you live, Jake offered from behind his cover. Thane's yellow eyes burned with rage and humiliation. He had led his warriors into battle confident of victory, only to watch them defeated by what he had considered an inferior species. This cannot be, he whispered. Valerians are the greatest warriors in the galaxy. Maybe, Williams replied, but Marines are the greatest soldiers. Thane raised his weapon one final time, but Jake was already moving. The Marine sergeant rolled out from behind his cover and struck the Valerian commander with a precise combination of moves that left Thane unconscious. On the cantina floor, the entire fight had lasted exactly 60 seconds, just as Jake had predicted. Williams looked around at her Marines and nodded with satisfaction. Threat neutralized. Secure the area and check for wounded. The demonstration was over. The cantina was eerily quiet after the brief but decisive battle. 7 Valerian warriors lay unconscious on the floor, their weapons scattered and harmless. The Marines maintained their positions, weapons ready, until Staff Sergeant Williams gave the all-clear signal. Secure those weapons, Williams ordered. Check the prisoners for injuries. I want them alive and healthy when station security arrives. The alien patrons slowly emerged from their hiding places, staring in amazement at what they had just witnessed. Many had heard stories about human military capabilities, but seeing it firsthand was completely different. Elder Voss, the Nexian trader, approached Jake carefully. His blue skin had turned even paler during the fight, and his large eyes were wide with shock. Sergeant Mitchell, he said formally, I must ask you something that has been troubling me. Jake was checking his rifle and securing his equipment. What's on your mind, Elder Voss? Commander Thane and his warriors have been terrorizing this sector for months, Voss explained. They have attacked merchant convoys, destroyed mining stations, and defeated every security force sent against them. Jake nodded. We heard about that. It's one of the reasons we increased patrols in this area. Voss gestured toward the unconscious Valerians. But you defeated them so easily. How is this possible? They are experienced warriors with superior physical strength. That's exactly the problem, Jake replied, setting his weapon aside. They think like warriors, not like soldiers. The Nexian trader looked confused. Is there a difference? Jake smiled and gestured for Voss to join him at an undamaged table. Several other aliens moved closer, curious to hear the explanation. Even some of the human civilians who had been threatened earlier gathered around. A warrior fights for personal glory, Jake began. He wants to prove his individual strength and skill. When warriors fight together, they're really just fighting separately in the same place. Private Foster joined the conversation, having finished securing the Valerian weapons. But soldiers fight for the mission and for each other. Individual glory doesn't matter as much as getting the job done, Corporal Grant nodded in agreement. When Marines fight, we don't care who gets credit for the victory. We only care about protecting our people and completing the mission. Elder Voss was beginning to understand, so when Commander Thane's warriors attacked, they were each trying to win their own personal battle. Exactly, Jake confirmed. But we were fighting one battle with 20 people. Every move one of us made supported the others. When they attacked one Marine, they had to deal with responses from multiple Marines. A Korthak warrior who had been watching from across the cantina approached the group. His people were allies of the Valerians, and he was clearly struggling to accept what he had seen. This coordination you speak of, the Korthak said slowly. It requires extensive communication and planning. How did 20 Marines coordinate so perfectly in such a small space? Sergeant Clark answered this question. Training. We've practiced these scenarios thousands of times. Every Marine knows what every other Marine will do in any given situation. We call it muscle memory, added Corporal Davis. When something like this happens, we don't have to think about what to do. Our bodies just do it automatically. Williams joined the group, having finished organizing the secure area. The real secret is that we were already in position before the confrontation started. This wasn't a rescue mission. This was a planned security operation. This revelation caused murmurs of surprise among the alien observers. Elder Voss leaned forward with interest. You were already here? All 20 of you? Standard procedure for shore leave, Williams explained. When Marines visit civilian areas, we always maintain security teams in position. We blend in with the crowd, but we're always ready to respond to threats. Jake pointed around the cantina. Every hiding spot you saw us emerge from had been scouted and prepared hours ago. We knew exactly where to position ourselves for maximum tactical advantage. The human family that had been threatened by Thane approached the table. The father, a middle-aged colonist named Robert Chen, looked grateful but confused. Sergeant Mitchell, he said, how did you know we would need protection tonight? We didn't know about you specifically, Jake admitted. But we knew that Valerian raiders had been active in this sector. When Marines go on shore leave in a potential threat area, we always maintain security protocols. His wife, Lisa Chen, looked around at the Marines who were now helping to clean up the cantina. So all of these soldiers were here the entire time, just watching and waiting? That's right, Williams confirmed. Some of them have been in position since this afternoon. Others arrived when Jake sent his signal, but all of them knew exactly what to do when the situation developed. The young daughter, Amy Chen, tugged on her father's sleeve. Daddy, are all human soldiers like this? Before her father could answer, Jake knelt down to her level. Not all human soldiers are Marines, Amy, but all Marines are trained to work together like this. It's what makes us special. Elder Voss had been quiet for several minutes, processing everything he had learned. Finally, he spoke up again. Sergeant Mitchell, I must share something with you. Word of this encounter will spread throughout the sector within hours. Every spaceship captain, every trader, every colonial administrator will hear about what happened here tonight. That's fine, Jake replied. We're not trying to keep it secret. But you must understand the implications, Voss continued. For months, alien species in this sector have believed that humans were weak. The Valerians convinced many of us that your people could not match superior alien warriors in combat. Williams nodded slowly. And now? Now they will know the truth. Humans do not win through superior individual strength. You win through superior coordination and planning. The Korthak warrior who had been listening stepped forward. This changes everything. My people have been considering an alliance with the Valerians against human expansion. And now? Jake asked. The alien warrior looked at the unconscious Valerians, then back at the Marines. Now I think we need to reconsider our assumptions about human military capabilities. Elder Voss stood up from the table. Sergeant Mitchell, I have one final question. Go ahead. What happens now? To the Valerians, I mean. Jake glanced at Williams, who nodded permission for him to answer. They'll be turned over to station security, and then to the Colonial Authority for prosecution. They committed acts of piracy and terrorism. They'll face trial and punishment under interstellar law. But they are still alive, Voss observed. You could have killed them all easily. We could have, Jake agreed. But that wasn't necessary. Marines used the minimum force required to complete the mission. Our job was to stop the threat and protect the civilians. We did that. The Nexian trader nodded with understanding. Another difference between warriors and soldiers. Warriors seek to destroy their enemies. Soldiers seek to complete their missions. As if summoned by their conversation, the first station security officers began arriving at the cantina. They looked around at the scene with professional interest, noting the unconscious Valerians and the calm, organized Marines. The senior security officer, a human named Captain Rodriguez, approached Williams. Staff Sergeant, what's the situation here? Threat neutralized, Captain. 7 Valerian warriors detained. No serious injuries to civilians or Marines. We're ready to turn the prisoners over to your custody. Rodriguez nodded and began directing his officers to secure the scene. As the Valerians were carried away on stretchers, the alien patrons continued to discuss what they had witnessed. The demonstration was over, but its effects were just beginning. 3 hours later, Murphy's cantina had returned to something resembling normal operation. The broken furniture had been cleared away, and Kef, the bartender, was serving drinks again, though his hands still shook slightly when he poured them. Commander Thane had regained consciousness in the station's medical bay. His first words upon waking were a demand to speak with the Marines who had defeated his warriors. Station Security Captain Rodriguez, after consulting with Staff Sergeant Williams, agreed to arrange the meeting. Jake Mitchell sat across from Thane in the medical bay's consultation room. The Valerian commander was restrained but alert, his yellow eyes studying the human with newfound respect and confusion. "I do not understand what happened," Thane said quietly. "My warriors were veterans of 50 battles. We have conquered entire star systems. How did 20 humans defeat us so easily?" Jake leaned back in his chair. "You want an honest answer?" "Yes. You made the same mistake that most warrior cultures make. You assumed that individual strength equals military effectiveness." Thane's scaled brow furrowed. "Are you saying my warriors were weak?" "Not at all. Your warriors are probably stronger, faster, and tougher than any individual Marine. In a one-on-one fight, they might win most of the time." "Then how?" "Because we didn't fight one-on-one," Jake explained. "We fought 20-on-7. Every time one of your warriors engaged one of us, he found himself fighting 3 or 4 Marines." Thane was quiet for a long moment, processing this information. "Your species fights without honor." Jake shook his head. "Our species fights to win. Honor is important to us, but it comes from completing the mission and protecting our people, not from individual combat glory." "Explain to me how 20 warriors can appear from nowhere in a secured location." "We weren't warriors appearing from nowhere. We were soldiers who were already in position." Jake pulled up a holographic display of the cantina's layout. "When Marines go on shore leave, we don't just drink and relax. We maintain security protocols." The display showed the positions each Marine had occupied before the confrontation began. Red dots marked hiding spots throughout the cantina's structure. "You see, Commander, Marines don't travel alone. We work in units. When one Marine is in danger, the entire unit responds." Thane studied the display carefully. "This level of coordination requires extensive planning and preparation." "Exactly. While your warriors were focusing on intimidating civilians and proving their individual strength, my Marines were already in position and ready to respond to any threat." "But how did you know where to position yourselves?" Jake smiled. "We didn't know specifically that you would show up tonight, but we knew that Valerian raiders had been active in this sector. We prepared for the possibility of trouble." The Valerian commander leaned forward as much as his restraints allowed. "You planned for a battle that might never happen. We plan for every battle that might happen. That's what makes us effective." Thane was quiet for several minutes, his warrior's mind trying to process this new understanding of human military doctrine. Finally, he spoke again. "My people will not believe this. Valerians have dominated this sector for generations. How can humans be superior to us in warfare?" "We're not superior in individual combat," Jake corrected. "But we are superior in military organization and tactics. There's a difference." A soft chime indicated that someone was requesting entry to the consultation room. Captain Rodriguez opened the door to admit Staff Sergeant Williams and Elder Voss. "Commander Thane," Williams said formally, "I understand you have questions about what happened tonight." Thane nodded slowly. "Your sergeant has explained your tactics. But I still do not understand how your species developed such methods." Williams took a seat across from the Valerian. "May I ask you something first? How do Valerians train for combat? Individual combat skills, weapon mastery, physical conditioning. Each warrior perfects his personal abilities. And when Valerians fight together?" Thane looked confused by the question. "We fight together by fighting in the same location. Each warrior seeks his own victories." Williams nodded. "That's exactly what I expected. Humans learned long ago that individual skill has limits. No matter how good one person becomes, they can be overwhelmed by multiple opponents working together." Elder Voss spoke up from his position near the door. "Commander Thane, I have spoken with merchants and traders throughout the sector since tonight's events. Word is spreading quickly." "What kind of word?" Thane asked warily. "That human Marines cannot be defeated by conventional warrior tactics. That threatening one human soldier means facing coordinated response from many human soldiers." Williams leaned forward. "Commander, I want you to understand something important. What happened tonight was not a special operation. It was standard procedure for Marines on shore leave. Thane's eyes widened. Standard procedure? Every time Marines visit civilian areas, we maintain security teams in position. Every Marine unit in the galaxy trains for exactly this type of situation. Jake added, "What you experienced tonight happens whenever someone threatens Marines or the people we protect. It's not unique to our unit or our location." The implications of this revelation were clearly troubling to Thane. If every human military unit operated with the same level of coordination and preparation, then Valerian military doctrine needed complete revision. "How many humans serve in your military?" Thane asked quietly. Williams consulted her personal data pad. The Colonial Marine Corps has approximately 2 million active personnel. The various planetary defense forces add another 8 million, and those numbers are growing as human colonies expand. Thane's scaled face showed genuine fear for the first time since his capture. 10 million soldiers who fight like the ones I encountered tonight? More or less, Williams confirmed. Training standards vary between units, but the basic tactical principles are the same throughout human military forces. Elder Voss moved closer to the conversation. "Commander Thane, I believe this information changes the strategic situation in our sector significantly." "How so?" Thane asked, though he seemed to already know the answer. "The Valerian Empire has been expanding by defeating individual planetary defense forces through superior warrior skills. But if human colonies are protected by coordinated military units," Thane finished the thought, "then Valerian expansion into human space is impossible." Williams nodded. "We're not trying to threaten your people, Commander, but we will defend our colonies and our civilians. If Valerian raiders continue attacking human settlements, they will face the same response you experienced tonight." Thane looked around the room at the humans and the Nexian trader. "What happens to me and my warriors now?" "You'll be tried for piracy and terrorism under interstellar law," Captain Rodriguez explained from the doorway. "But if you cooperate and provide information about other raider activities, the Colonial Authority might be willing to consider reduced sentences. And if I refuse?" Williams answered this question. "Then you and your warriors will spend the next 20 years in a colonial prison facility. Your choice." Thane was quiet for a long time, weighing his options. Finally, he looked directly at Jake. "If I agree to cooperate, will you answer one more question for me?" "Depends on the question. How long has your species been fighting wars this way?" Jake thought for a moment. "Coordinated small unit tactics?" "About 400 years. But the basic principle goes back much further. Humans learned early in our history that groups working together can defeat larger groups of individuals." "And you have been perfecting these methods for 4 centuries?" "Constantly. Every battle teaches us something new. Every encounter with alien species shows us new ways to improve our coordination and tactics." Thane nodded slowly. "Then my people have been preparing for the wrong kind of war." Williams stood up from her chair. "Commander, your people don't have to be our enemies. Many alien species have found peaceful coexistence with human colonies to be beneficial for everyone involved. But if we choose to continue raiding human settlements, then you'll keep running into Marines," Jake said simply. "And the results will be the same every time." Elder Voss stepped forward. "Commander Thane, may I suggest that this encounter could be the beginning of a new relationship between Valerians and humans? One based on mutual respect rather than conflict?" Thane looked around the room one final time, his warrior's pride warring with his newly acquired understanding of human military capabilities. "I will cooperate with the Colonial Authority," he said finally, "and I will recommend to the Valerian High Command that they reconsider their policies regarding human expansion." Williams nodded approvingly. "That's a wise decision, Commander." As the meeting concluded and the various participants prepared to leave, Thane called out to Jake one last time. "Sergeant Mitchell, will you tell me something honestly? If I can. When you first stood up to me in the cantina, did you know that your Marines would be able to defeat my warriors so completely?" Jake smiled. "Commander, I've been a Marine for 5 years. In that time, I've never seen a situation where 20 Marines couldn't handle 7 opponents, no matter how tough those opponents were. Your confidence was not false bravado. It was experience." As Jake left the medical bay, he found Elder Voss waiting in the corridor. "Sergeant Mitchell, I wanted to thank you for what you did tonight." "Just doing our job, Elder Voss." "Perhaps, but your actions tonight have changed how every species in this sector views human military capabilities." Word is already spreading to other star systems. Jake shrugged. Good. Maybe it will prevent future incidents like this one. Indeed. I believe the age of easy victories over human colonies has ended. 3 weeks later, Jake received a message from Marine Command. Applications for Colonial Marine Corps training from various alien species had increased by 300%. All of the applicants mentioned the same thing. They wanted to learn the human way of war. Jake smiled as he forwarded the message to Staff Sergeant Williams. The demonstration at Murphy's Cantina had accomplished more than just stopping 7 Valerian raiders. It had announced to the galaxy that humans were not the weak, divided species that many aliens had believed them to be. The message was clear. Mess with one Marine, deal with all Marines. And that message was being received across the stars.